Evening. I've just finished reading a book called The Only One Left by Riley Sager. So this is a murder mystery set in Maine, and the main character, Kit, is an in-home caregiver. So she looks after elderly patients who have trouble looking after themselves. Only for the last 6 months, she's been suspended from her job because the people believe that she caused the death of her last patient, and even though the courts did not find her guilty because there was no evidence to prove that she had intentionally done anything wrong, everyone in town believes that Kit is a murderer. Obviously, this makes her life extremely challenging, but even though Kit would really like to just move away to somewhere else and leave it all behind her, she doesn't really have the finances to do so. So instead, she's forced to return her job and take on an assignment that nobody else really wants to take. So she's given the task of looking after a woman called Lenora Hope. Lenora Hope is kind of a town boogeyman back in 1929, which is 50 some years before this story takes place. There were several murders at the Hope house. So people think that Lenora killed both her parents and her sister, even though she claims that she had nothing to do with those deaths. She was, as far as people are aware, the only person in the house at the time. So basically the conclusion is, since no one else could have done it, then she must be guilty, and everyone thinks that this is the case, including Kit herself. So she's actually really scared by this assignment. But at the same time, there's a part of her, after she meets this old woman, that kind of wants to believe that maybe she is innocent. So Lenora these days seems like a pretty harmless old woman because she is mostly paralyzed. She can't speak and she can only move her left hand. So she can, the only way she can really communicate with people is by tapping, or, as Kit eventually finds out, by using a typewriter. And one day Lenora offers to tell Kit exactly what happened back then, and Kit gets really caught up in this possibility because I guess in some ways she sees some similarities between herself and Lenora, since they're both people that everyone else is convinced murdered people that they cared about. And I think that in some way she thinks that maybe if she can prove Lenora is innocent, that somehow that will also show people that she herself did not commit the crime that they believe she did. But in the process of trying to figure out what happened more than 50 years ago in the house, she I guess learns that maybe there was a lot going on that people really don't know about, and also that she's not sure if she really wants to know the truth after all. It's this is something that I liked. It's definitely a pretty complicated kind of murder mystery, since it is trying to figure out something that happened so long ago. Oh, and in addition to that, Lenora's previous nurse, the person who was looking after her before Kit got the assignment, left the house very suddenly, so suddenly that she actually didn't take, as far as she can tell, any of her belongings with her, and she's wondering what could have caused someone who apparently cared about this old woman to just abandon her post like that. But anyways, it's the kind of story that starts with what seems like a somewhat simple crime, and then it keeps introducing these new elements, and you get more and more, the story gets more and more complicated. You have the narrative is split between present day, where Kit is starting to look into what happened and also trying to face her own, I guess, guilt and insecurities and stuff because of what was happening in her life, and Lenora telling her story of what happened back then, and you get to see kind of how all the little steps and all the little characters come together. I mentioned when I was doing the review for Synchronized Sorcery, that one seemed to create a lot of threads and then didn't tie them off. Well, this story is kind of the opposite. It started simple and then it led into a lot of threads, but then it does a really good job at bringing everything back together and tying the story up again at the end. So, did not like I mean, it was kind of a grim story, but I guess that might be kind of expected, and I think it was more tragic than I was expecting it to be. But I wouldn't necessarily say that's bad, depending on, I guess, what you're currently in the mood for. It's also definitely the kind of story that has a lot of plot twists, if plot twists is something that you enjoy.